Emma was a librarian who lived a very quiet life. Every morning, she walked through the narrow streets of the town, holding a small bag with her lunch inside. The townspeople often noticed her, but very few stopped to talk. She was kind and gentle, yet she carried a silence around her that made others keep their distance. To most people, she was just the woman who worked in the library, keeping the books in order and reminding children to whisper. The library itself was old but beautiful. The tall wooden shelves reached almost to the ceiling, filled with stories that had been read by many generations. Dust often gathered in the corners, but Emma loved even that, because it made the place feel like it had history. She spent hours carefully dusting, repairing broken book covers, and arranging novels so that anyone could find them easily. Books were her best friends, and sometimes she thought they were the only ones who truly understood her. Yet deep inside, Emma longed for more. At night, when she closed the library and walked home alone, she often imagined a different life. She dreamed of someone walking beside her, someone who would notice her not just as the librarian, but as Emma, a woman with feelings, dreams, and a quiet heart waiting to be heard. But the days passed one after another, always the same, and Emma started to believe that perhaps love was not written in her story. Still, she never let her loneliness show. Whenever people came into the library, she welcomed them with a warm smile. She recommended books, helped students find what they needed, and listened kindly when old men spoke of stories from their youth. Many admired her patience and gentleness, but they never guessed how empty her evenings felt once she was alone again. Her small apartment was simple, filled with second-hand furniture and a few plants she tried her best to care for. After work, she would cook a small meal, sit by the window with a cup of tea, and read. Sometimes she would write little notes in a diary, pouring her heart onto the page. Another quiet day, she often wrote, "I wonder if anyone truly sees me." One evening, as Emma walked home from the library, the streets glowed softly under the setting sun. She watched families laughing together, couples walking hand in hand, and groups of friends chatting happily. She smiled at them but felt a small ache inside her chest. It was not jealousy, it was longing. She wanted to feel that kind of connection too. She wanted to be seen, to be loved, to have someone who cared enough to wait for her after a long day of work. The library, however, remained her safe world. She found comfort in its quiet corners, in the soft turning of pages, in the smell of old paper that filled the air. It was there that she felt most at home. Sometimes she even whispered her thoughts to the shelves, as though the books could listen. "If only someone could read me, the way they read you," she said once while placing a novel back in its place. Emma didn't know that her life was about to change. She had no idea that someone had already noticed her, someone who had been quietly watching her gentle ways from afar. While she believed herself invisible, her every small act of kindness was leaving a mark on someone's heart. But for now, she was still the lonely librarian sitting behind her wooden desk, adjusting her glasses, and losing herself in the worlds written by others. She did not yet realize that her own story, one filled with mystery and emotion, was just beginning to unfold. The morning began like any other for Emma. She unlocked the heavy wooden doors of the library, pushed them open, and stepped into the quiet space that always welcomed her. The smell of books, ink, and dust surrounded her like a familiar friend. She walked down the aisles, running her fingers lightly along the shelves as if greeting the novels one by one. She carried a stack of books to return them to their proper places. As she slid one thick novel into its shelf, something unusual caught her eye. A folded piece of paper was tucked carefully between the pages. At first, she thought it was a bookmark someone had forgotten. She pulled it out gently, expecting perhaps a shopping list or a note from a careless student. But this was different. The paper was creamy white, smooth to the touch, and folded neatly. Emma frowned in curiosity and opened it. Her eyes moved across the words slowly, carefully, to the quiet soul who fills this library with light. You may not notice, but you are seen. The way you care for these books, the way you smile even when no one is looking, it matters. There is kindness in you that the world often forgets to value. This is only the beginning of what I hope to tell you. Yours, always watching. Emma's heart beat faster. She looked around, but the library was empty except for the soft sunlight spilling through the tall windows. Who could have written this? The handwriting was elegant, with smooth curves that showed patience. She read the note again, this time slower, as though the words themselves held warmth. Her cheeks turned pink. No one had spoken to her in such a way before. People often thanked her politely for her help in the library, but no one had ever told her that she was seen. For years, she had felt invisible, like a shadow moving quietly through the world. And now, this letter told her she wasn't unseen after all. She folded it back carefully and slipped it into her pocket. All day long, she found herself distracted. Each time someone entered the library, her eyes searched their face a little more closely. Was it the young man who often borrowed history books? Was it the woman who sat in the corner, writing notes for hours? Or was it someone who had left before she arrived? By evening, as she locked the library doors, Emma felt both excitement and confusion. Who had written the letter? And why her? She was not the kind of woman who usually drew attention. She did not wear bright colors or stand in the center of conversations. She lived in quietness, and the world usually passed her by. Yet this mysterious writer had noticed her silence and valued it. When she reached her apartment, Emma sat by the window with the letter spread out on her small wooden table. She read it again and again, tracing the letters with her fingertip. The words felt almost too kind, as if they belonged in a dream rather than in her real life. For the first time in many years, she smiled not out of politeness, but out of a genuine warmth that filled her chest. The next morning, she walked to the library with a strange hope inside her. She wondered if there might be another letter waiting. She shook her head at herself, almost laughing. "Don't be silly," she whispered. It was probably just a one-time thing. But still, her eyes kept searching the shelves. She found nothing that day, nor the day after. Yet the thought of the letter stayed with her. Each time she helped a visitor, each time she bent down to pick up a fallen book, she wondered, could this be the person? Are they watching me now? On the third day, as she opened a novel to place it back in its spot, her breath caught in her throat. There it was, a second folded paper, carefully hidden just like before. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it. To the keeper of stories. Perhaps you are wondering why I write. I cannot yet tell you my name, but I can tell you this: your gentleness has changed me. I am a man who has seen much of the world, but the world often felt cold. Then I saw you, quiet, steady, always patient. Without saying a word, you showed me a different kind of strength. If these letters bring even a small smile to your face, then I am glad. Yours, still watching. Emma pressed the letter to her chest, her eyes stinging with emotion. Whoever this mysterious writer was, he had noticed things about her that no one else ever had. And for the first time in many years, she felt something stir in her heart, something like hope, something like the beginning of a story she never thought she would have. The days that followed were no longer ordinary for Emma. The quiet routine of the library now carried a spark of mystery. Each morning, she entered the building with her heart beating a little faster, her eyes scanning the shelves, wondering if another letter was waiting for her. And soon, there always was. Sometimes it was tucked inside a thick dictionary, sometimes between the pages of a romance novel, and once even slipped under her desk as if placed there with great care. Each letter was folded neatly, written in the same elegant handwriting, and signed with the same line, "Yours, always watching." Emma read each one slowly, as if afraid the words would disappear. The letters never said the writer's name, never revealed too much, but each note touched something deep inside her. One read, "You smile at people even when they walk past you without noticing. That is kindness. Do you know how rare that is?" Another said, "The way you care for these old books shows how you would care for people, if only they let you. I wish more could see what I see." And another, "I am far from your world, yet somehow, my heart rests in this quiet library with you." Each note made Emma feel both warm and unsettled. She had always thought of herself as invisible, someone the world overlooked. But here was someone who noticed everything: her smile, her patience, even the way she handled books. How could a stranger see her so clearly when no one else ever had? Still, questions filled her mind. Who was this person? Was it someone who came into the library often? Or someone who only watched from afar? Could it be dangerous? Emma did not want to believe so. The words in the letters carried gentleness, not harm. Yet the mystery of it made her restless. At night, she sat by her window with the letters spread across her table. Sometimes she reread them again and again, tracing the curves of the handwriting. A part of her wanted to believe this was real, that someone truly cared. Another part of her warned not to trust too quickly. "Perhaps it is a joke," she whispered to herself one evening. But her heart told her otherwise. The townspeople noticed a change in Emma. She smiled more often, her steps seemed lighter, and her eyes carried a glow that had not been there before. Children in the library whispered, "Miss Emma is happier these days." She brushed off their comments with a shy laugh, but deep inside, she knew it was true. The letters had become her secret treasure, a light in her once lonely world. Still, she could not stop wondering about the writer. One rainy afternoon, as she arranged books on the top shelf, she noticed a tall figure across the street through the library's window. A man, dressed in a dark coat, stood still under an umbrella, his gaze fixed on the library doors. The rain blurred his face, but for a brief moment, Emma felt certain that he was watching her. Her heart skipped. Was he the one? Before she could look again, the man turned and walked away into the gray rain. She pressed her hand against the window, her thoughts racing. The next morning, she found another letter waiting. This one was different. "Perhaps you saw me yesterday. Perhaps you guessed. I am not ready to show myself yet, but know this: I mean no harm. My letters are not a game. They are the truest words I have ever written. Please, do not be afraid. In time, I will explain everything." Emma sat down, holding the paper tightly. The words calmed her heart, yet also deepened her curiosity. Who could he be? Why did he hide himself? Why choose her, out of all people? The mystery was both a comfort and a burden. Each day, she longed for the next letter, yet each day she also wondered if she was foolish to believe in them. Still, she could not deny the truth: her loneliness had begun to fade. The silence of her life now carried a heartbeat of hope. She placed the letters back in a small wooden box, keeping them safe. For the first time in years, Emma whispered into the quiet room, "Maybe my story is just beginning." What she did not know was that the writer, the man who had signed every note with "Yours, always watching," was closer than she imagined. He carried a secret that would change her life forever. And while Emma sat in her little library, wondering, he was already planning the moment when he would finally step out from the shadows and reveal the truth. The days were no longer heavy with silence for Emma. Each morning, she opened the library doors with a quiet excitement. Her eyes searched the shelves, her heart steady but hopeful, waiting for the next folded note that might be hiding between the pages. The mystery had become part of her life, like a story unfolding one chapter at a time. But even with all the letters, she still knew nothing of the writer, only his gentle words and the way he seemed to know her heart so well. Sometimes she wondered if she was falling in love with the voice of a man she had never met. Other times she scolded herself for such foolish thoughts. One evening, the sky turned gray, and rain began to fall as she prepared to close the library. The last visitor left, and Emma stood by the large front window, watching the drops race down the glass. She sighed softly, ready to turn off the lights, when she noticed something unusual. Across the street, under the soft glow of a lamp post, a tall figure stood holding an umbrella. The man wore a dark coat, and though the rain blurred his face, Emma felt certain his eyes were fixed on the library. For a moment, her breath caught. Could it be him? She didn't move. She simply stood by the window, her hands pressed against the glass, staring at the man in the rain. The world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet space between them. She felt as though he wanted her to notice him, but at the same time, he remained still, hidden by the curtain of rain. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he turned and walked away into the night. Emma's heart pounded. She whispered to herself, it was him. It must have been. The next morning, she arrived at the library earlier than usual, her steps quick with both nervousness and curiosity. She hurried to the shelves, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled open one book after another. And then she found it another letter. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the paper. Perhaps you saw me last night. Perhaps you wondered. I cannot yet stand before you, though I wish I could. Please believe that my distance is not out of unkindness. There are things I must explain, and when I do, you will understand why I chose this way. Until then, know this, every word I have written is true. Emma sank into the nearest chair, pressing the letter against her chest. A wave of emotions rushed through her: relief, fear, longing. He had admitted it. He had been there, watching her through the rain. He was real, not a dream or a trick of her imagination. But why couldn't he show himself? Why hide behind paper and ink when his heart seemed so open in the letters? That question followed her throughout the week. Each time she stacked books or helped a visitor, her mind returned to the man in the rain. She wondered what kind of life he lived. Was he shy, like her? Or was there a reason he could not step forward? One night, she placed all the letters on her table and read them again from the beginning. As she read the words, she began to notice small hints, phrases that spoke of travel, of business, of a life much larger than hers. One line in particular stayed with her: I am far from your world, yet somehow, my heart rests in this quiet library with you. Far from her world. She thought about it for hours, staring at the words until her candle burned low. Whoever he was, he came from a life very different from hers. And yet, he had chosen her, the quiet librarian, the woman no one else noticed. The thought filled her with both wonder and fear. On a quiet Sunday, Emma took a walk through the town market. She rarely visited the crowded place, but she wanted to clear her mind. As she passed stalls filled with fruit, flowers, and fabrics, she felt eyes following her. Turning slightly, she caught sight of the same tall figure in the distance. He wasn't close, but she recognized the way he stood, calm and watchful. Their eyes met for just a second. Emma's breath stopped, and a shiver ran through her. But before she could step forward, someone crossed between them, and when she looked again, the man was gone. That night, another letter waited for her at the library. I saw you today among the people, and you saw me. Forgive me for leaving so quickly. The time is not yet right. But soon, Emma, soon I will tell you everything. Her hands trembled as she folded the paper back. She whispered his words aloud, soon. For the first time in many years, her life no longer felt empty. She didn't know his name, his face, or his story, but she knew this: her days of loneliness were ending. Something bigger was waiting for her, something she had never dared to hope for. And though fear still lived in her heart, hope was now stronger. Emma placed the letter in her box with the others, but this time she smiled. She no longer felt invisible. Someone had seen her. Someone had chosen her. And soon, she would know why. The library had always been Emma's quiet world, a place of order and calm. But now it felt alive with secrets. Every book she touched might hide another letter, every shadow across the street might belong to him. The once empty silence was now filled with whispers of possibility. One evening, after the last visitor left, Emma began to tidy the shelves. Her hands brushed against a novel that seemed heavier than usual. Curious, she opened it and there it was. Another folded letter, neatly placed between the pages. She held her breath as she opened it, her heart thudding with both joy and nervousness. This one was longer than the others. The handwriting was careful, the words chosen with thought. Emma, I have written many letters to you, each one carrying a piece of what I cannot yet say aloud. But tonight I feel I must confess more. You deserve truth, not only mystery. I am a man who belongs to a world very different from yours. I live surrounded by wealth, business, and faces that smile without meaning it. For years, I believed that was all life had to offer: power, success, respect that is not real. But then, I saw you. You, sitting quietly in the library, arranging books as though they were treasures. You smiled at strangers without asking for anything in return. You lived with such honesty and peace that I felt drawn to you in a way I cannot explain. I am not a man you would expect. I am someone who carries a name known by many, yet I am lonelier than most. Watching you reminded me that there is still goodness in the world. Forgive me for hiding behind these letters. My fear is that if I reveal myself too soon, you may not believe that my feelings are real. But I promise, Emma, they are truer than anything I have ever known. Yours, still watching. Emma's hands shook as she held the paper. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. A billionaire? That's what he was saying, wasn't it? A man from a world far bigger, far richer than hers. She stared at the words for a long time. The idea felt impossible. Why would someone like him, someone with wealth, power, and everything the world admired, choose her, a simple librarian in a small town? Her first thought was disbelief. Perhaps it was a game. Perhaps he was exaggerating. But no, the handwriting was steady, the words sincere. She had read enough books, enough letters, to know when a man spoke from the heart. That night, she could not sleep. She walked across her small apartment, the letter clutched in her hand, her mind turning in circles. If what he said was true, then her life was about to change in ways she could not imagine. But did she even want such a change? She loved her quiet library, her gentle days. Could she ever belong in his world of wealth and noise? Yet when she thought of his words, her heart softened. You lived with such honesty and peace. He had seen her, not for her clothes or her looks or her simple life, but for her heart. That was something she had always wished for, and now it was happening in the most unexpected way. The following days were restless ones. Emma found herself glancing out the window often, searching for the tall figure in the distance. Once, she thought she saw him again standing at the corner of the street, watching quietly, but when she blinked, he was gone. Her heart ached with questions. Why couldn't he just come forward? Why all the mystery? And yet, deep inside, she knew she wasn't ready to meet him either. The letters gave her time to prepare, to believe, to let hope grow inside her lonely heart. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, she traced the edges of the newest letter and whispered to herself, he is real. He cares. But what will happen when he tells me everything? The library clock ticked softly in the background, each second stretching her thoughts further. She could feel her life balancing on the edge of something great, something she both feared and longed for. That evening, as she locked the library doors, she looked back at the rows of books. For years, they had been her only company. But now, the letters had written themselves into her story, changing her world forever. Emma walked home slowly under the setting sun. The golden light touched her face, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. Someone had chosen her, seen her, loved her in silence. And soon, she knew, the silence would break. Emma woke up earlier than usual the next morning. She had hardly slept, her mind filled with questions. The confession letter rested on her bedside table, its words echoing in her thoughts. I am someone who carries a name known by many, yet I am lonelier than most. She pressed the paper to her chest before leaving her home. For years, her life had been quiet and predictable. Now, each day felt heavy with expectation, as if something unseen was waiting for her. When she reached the library, she opened the doors with trembling hands. She tried to calm herself by arranging books, dusting the shelves, and greeting the few visitors who came that morning. Yet her heart remained restless. Was today the day he would appear? By the afternoon, the rain began to fall outside. The soft patter against the tall windows filled the silence of the library. Emma sat at her desk, lost in thought, when she noticed movement near the door. A tall man stepped inside, closing his umbrella slowly. His coat was dark, his posture confident, yet there was a gentleness in the way he looked around. Emma's breath caught. She knew. Before he even spoke, she knew. The man walked toward her, removing his hat. His face was calm but carried a nervousness she did not expect. His eyes, a deep shade of gray, met hers and did not look away. Emma, he said softly, his voice steady but warm. It's me. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her desk. You, her voice shook. You wrote the letters. He nodded. Yes. Every word. The silence between them stretched, filled with the sound of rain. Emma's heart raced. She wanted to believe, yet part of her feared this was all too much. The man continued, his voice low but sincere. My name is Alexander Hayes. Perhaps you've heard it before. In the city, people know me as a businessman, a man with too much wealth and too little truth in his life. But when I came here months ago, searching for quiet, I found you instead. I watched how you carried yourself with patience, with kindness, and I could not walk away. You reminded me of what is real. Emma's hands trembled. The name was familiar. She had read about him in newspapers, though she had never paid attention to that world of money and power. And now he was standing in her library, speaking as though she was the only one in the room. Why me? She whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Alexander's gaze softened. Because you are everything I am not. In my world, people smile but do not mean it. They speak but do not listen. But you live with honesty. You care even when no one notices. I wanted to tell you this in person long ago, but I was afraid. Afraid that my name, my world, would frighten you away. So I wrote letters instead. It was the only way I could show you my heart before showing you my face. Emma's eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. For so long, she had believed herself invisible. Yet here was a man, powerful and known by many, confessing that he had seen her all along. Still, doubt lingered. Alexander, your world is not mine. I am just a librarian. I live a simple life. How could I ever belong in the life you describe? He stepped closer, his expression gentle but firm. I am not asking you to enter my world. I am asking if you will let me enter yours. I do not want wealth or power when I am with you. I only want the peace I found in your presence, the kindness you carry so naturally. Emma, I do not love you for what you can give me, I love you for who you are. Her breath caught at his words. Love. He had said it plainly, without hesitation. For a long moment, she could not speak. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass like a rhythm of her racing heart. She looked into Alexander's eyes and saw no arrogance, No falsehood, only sincerity. Slowly, Emma smiled, a small but real smile that reached her eyes. You hid behind letters, she whispered, but now you are here. I don't know what the future will bring, but I believe you. Relief washed across Alexander's face. He let out a quiet breath, as if he had been holding it for weeks. And in that quiet library, surrounded by the books that had been her only companions for years, Emma realized something: she was no longer alone. Her story had changed, and it was only the beginning. The rain had stopped by the time Emma closed the library that night. She walked beside Alexander down the quiet street, her umbrella tucked away as the evening sky cleared. The air smelled fresh, the kind of freshness that comes after a storm, and Emma felt as though her life, too, had just been washed clean. For years she had walked these same streets alone, her footsteps echoing softly in the silence. Tonight, she walked with someone beside her. The difference was almost too much for her heart to hold. Alexander walked at her pace, not rushing, not leading, just staying close. He carried no sign of the wealthy man the newspapers spoke about. Instead, he looked like any ordinary man, quiet and thoughtful, his eyes focused only on her. Are you frightened still? He asked gently. Emma shook her head, though her voice trembled when she answered. Not frightened. Just uncertain. This is all so new for me. He nodded in understanding. It is new for me too. I have lived surrounded by noise, yet never truly heard. With you, even silence feels full. That is why I wrote those letters, because you gave me something I had never known before. Emma lowered her gaze, her cheeks warm. I never thought someone would notice me at all. I thought I would always live quietly, hidden in my books. Alexander smiled softly. Perhaps it is the quiet ones who shine the brightest. They do not try to be seen, and yet, they are unforgettable. His words touched her deeply. She had spent so many years wondering if her life mattered, if anyone saw her beyond her role as a librarian. And now, here was a man who saw her more clearly than she had ever seen herself. When they reached her small apartment, Emma hesitated at the doorway. This is where I live, she said softly, almost apologetic. Compared to the grand world Alexander belonged to, her home felt simple, almost too plain. But Alexander only smiled warmly. It suits you. It is honest, just like you. I would rather be here with you than in the finest house without you. Emma's heart swelled. She invited him inside, and they sat by the window with cups of tea. For a while, they didn't speak, simply listening to the soft sound of the night. The silence was not heavy, it was gentle, comfortable, like two souls breathing in rhythm. Finally, Emma asked the question that had rested on her mind since his reveal. Why me, Alexander? Out of all the people you could have chosen, why did you write to me? He looked at her with steady eyes. Because you live the life I always wished for. Simple, peaceful, real. You do not wear masks to please others. You do not chase things that vanish quickly. You remind me of who I once hoped to be, before I lost myself in the world of wealth. Loving you is not a choice, it is the most natural truth of my life. Emma's eyes grew moist, but she blinked the tears away. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen, understood, chosen. As the night deepened, Alexander stood and prepared to leave. I do not want to rush you, he said softly. Take the time you need. My letters were only the beginning. Now, we can write our story together, one day at a time. Emma walked him to the door. She hesitated, then whispered, You gave me back something I thought I lost long ago, hope. And maybe love too. Alexander's expression softened, and for a brief moment, his strong, confident mask slipped, showing the loneliness he had carried all those years. Then it was worth everything, he said. When he left, Emma stood at her window, watching as he disappeared down the quiet street. She pressed her hand against the glass and smiled. For the first time in many years, her heart felt alive. The next morning, she returned to the library. The shelves were the same, the books unchanged, but she no longer felt alone among them. She walked down the aisles and whispered softly, "My story has begun." And though she did not find another letter waiting that day, she knew she no longer needed one. Alexander had given her something far greater than words on paper. He had given her a future, a new chapter waiting to be written together. The lonely librarian was lonely no more. She had been seen, she had been chosen, and she had discovered that love could arrive quietly, like a folded note tucked between the pages of an old book, unexpected, yet life-changing.